I told myself I was doing the right thing. I signed the papers because he said it was, for my own good, because family is supposed to look out for each other, even when it hurts. On moving day, I stood there with one suitcase while my son avoided my eyes, and his wife smiled and said I'd be fine in a small studio, that it was all I really needed now. People say I should have fought back, that I gave up too easily, but they didn't hear what was said behind closed doors. So tell me, when the people you love choose comfort over you, is staying quiet still the right thing to do? Stay with me. I didn't lose the house the day it was sold. I lost it weeks earlier, sitting at a narrow conference table with a pen in my hand, staring at papers I didn't fully read because my son kept talking. He spoke calmly, the way people do when they've already decided what's best for you. He said words like security, simpler living, less responsibility. He said I was tired. He said I deserved peace. I had buried my husband 6 months before that meeting. 38 years together, and then suddenly the house was too quiet. The ticking clock in the kitchen sounded louder at night. Every room held echoes of conversations that weren't coming back. I didn't know how to explain that to my son, how the walls weren't just walls. They were memory. They were proof that a life had happened. He told me the market was good. He said it didn't make sense for someone my age to live alone in a place that big. He said I'd be closer to them, safer. His wife sat beside him, hands folded neatly, nodding at the right moments. She didn't say much then. She didn't have to. I remember thinking that refusing would make me look ungrateful. Difficult. Old. I had already felt myself shrinking since my husband passed, becoming someone people spoke for instead of with. So I signed. My hand shook, but I signed anyway. After that, things moved quickly. Too quickly. The realtor called. Boxes appeared in my hallway. My son stopped asking and started informing. Dates, times, arrangements. Each update felt like another door quietly closing. At night, I walked through the house alone. I touched the banister my husband had refinished one summer, the window frame where we once marked our son's height year after year. I told myself that homes were just structures, that memories could be carried. Still, I cried in the laundry room so no one would hear. When I tried to talk about it, my son grew impatient. He said I was making this harder than it needed to be. He reminded me how much he was handling for me. I could hear the strain in his voice, the way responsibility sounded like resentment. I didn't want to be another burden. The day everything changed was moving day. A cold, bright morning. The kind that makes things feel sharper than they should. A moving truck blocked the driveway, men carrying pieces of my life out the front door as if they were just objects. A sofa. A dresser. A box labeled kitchen, fragile that held more than dishes. I stood on the porch with one suitcase. That was all I was taking with me at first, they said. The rest would come later. Or be stored. Or sorted through. No one was very clear. My son stayed busy, giving directions, checking his phone. Every time I tried to catch his eye, he looked past me, like if we didn't acknowledge what was happening, it wouldn't hurt as much. His wife stood a few steps away, watching. She looked relaxed. Almost cheerful. When it was time to leave, she came closer and smiled. Not cruelly. Not loudly. Just enough. She said something about how the studio apartment was small, but manageable. That I wouldn't need much space anymore. That I'd be comfortable. She laughed softly and said it like it was a kindness. You're not going to need all that room now, she added. This makes sense. The words landed heavier than I expected. I felt exposed, like something private had been spoken out loud. My son didn't say anything. He didn't correct her. He just kept his eyes on the truck. In that moment, I realized this hadn't just been about practicality. It was about convenience. About fitting me into a smaller corner of their lives. I wondered when that decision had been made, and how long I had been the only one pretending it wasn't. People later told me I should have spoken up. That I should have refused to leave. That it was my house, my right. But standing there, with strangers carrying away pieces of my past, I felt tired in a way that went deeper than my body. I felt like if I pushed back, I would lose something else. Whatever fragile connection I still had with my son. So I stayed quiet. I hugged him goodbye. He hugged me back, distracted, already thinking about what came next. As the car pulled away, I watched the house disappear behind us. I didn't turn around. I wasn't ready to see it one last time. That night, alone in a place that didn't know me, I sat on the edge of the bed and asked myself a question I couldn't answer yet. Had I given up my home, or had it been taken the moment I stopped believing my voice still mattered? And if I finally spoke now, would anyone listen? The studio apartment was quiet in a different way. Not the heavy quiet of grief, but the hollow kind, where sound disappears too quickly. One window. One narrow kitchen. No place for extra chairs, no room for things that didn't serve a purpose. I told myself this was what simpler looked like. The first few nights, I slept with the light on. Not because I was afraid, but because darkness made the space feel even smaller. I unpacked slowly, choosing what deserved to stay out and what would be tucked away. Each decision felt like a test. What part of my life was still allowed to take up space? My son called once that week. He asked if I was settling in. His voice sounded relieved, like a task had been completed. I said I was fine. That word again. Fine had become my shield. He didn't ask much more, and I didn't offer. Days passed. I learned the rhythm of the building. The hum of the elevator. The footsteps in the hallway. People lived close to each other here, but no one really knew anyone. It was easy to disappear, and for a while, I let myself. What surprised me wasn't the loneliness. It was the clarity. Without the house, without the roles I had played for decades, I began to hear my own thoughts again. Not the ones shaped by compromise or obligation, but the quieter voice underneath. The one that had gone silent long before my husband died. I thought about the moment I signed the papers. How I hadn't been asked what I wanted, only told what was reasonable. I thought about my son's silence on moving day, how his quiet had felt louder than any argument. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel something other than sadness. I felt anger. Not sharp or explosive. Steady. It scared me at first. I had spent so long believing that being agreeable was the same as being loving. That causing discomfort meant causing damage. But sitting there, in that small room, I realized something had already been damaged. And pretending otherwise hadn't saved it. The next time my son called, I didn't answer right away. I let the phone ring, not out of spite, but because I needed a moment to decide who I was going to be in that conversation. When I called back, my hands were steady. We met a few days later at a cafe near his office. Neutral ground. He arrived late, apologizing as he sat down. We talked about the weather, about traffic. All the safe things. Finally, he asked how I was doing. This time, I didn't say fine. I told him the apartment was clean. That it was quiet. That I felt like a guest in my own life. The word surprised both of us. He shifted in his seat, uncomfortable, like he hadn't expected honesty. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just said that I hadn't felt included in the decision the way I needed to be. That losing the house had felt like losing my place in the family. I told him that when his wife spoke on moving day, and he said nothing, something inside me closed. He looked down at the table. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he did, his voice was defensive. He said he was trying to help. That everything had been stressful. That I didn't understand how hard it had been on them. I listened. Really listened. And then I said something I had never said before. I believe you. But that doesn't erase how it felt to me. The conversation didn't end with apologies or breakthroughs. There was no dramatic reconciliation. But something shifted. I wasn't asking to move back. I wasn't demanding anything. I was drawing a line and naming it. I told him I needed to be consulted, not managed. That I wanted visits that weren't scheduled around convenience. That respect, at my age, wasn't optional. He nodded slowly. I don't know how much he understood, but I know he heard me. When I left the cafe, I noticed my shoulders felt lighter. Not because everything was resolved, but because I hadn't abandoned myself. Back at the apartment, I made one small change. I moved the bed closer to the window. I placed a framed photo on the nightstand, not hidden in a drawer. It was my husband and me, years ago, smiling into the sun. The room didn't grow bigger, but it felt more like mine. I began taking walks in the evening. Not to go anywhere in particular, just to remind myself that I could choose direction. I stopped waiting for permission to exist fully. The house was gone. That loss was real. But I started to understand that dignity doesn't live in square footage. It lives in boundaries. In the quiet decision to speak when silence no longer protects you. I don't know what my relationship with my son will look like in the years ahead. It may never return to what it was. But I know this, I am no longer shrinking to fit into someone else's comfort. Sometimes, growth doesn't look like winning. Sometimes, it looks like standing still and saying, this is where I am, and this is as small as I will go. And if you've ever found yourself giving up pieces of your life just to keep the peace, I wonder. What might change if you chose yourself, even quietly, just once?